And a big thank you to the previous speakers who I thought have set the context really well. I've got far too many slides. I've already apologised for that, but I think it's indicative of the activity and excitement in this area at the moment. There's an awful lot going on. So I will go through rather rapidly, but I believe that the presentations are available.
Yes.
So, anything you miss by me going through too quickly, you can pick up on the presentation after. Okay, as it's the World Circular Economy Forum, I thought I'd do a brief world tour about what's going on around the entire world, rather than just being UK focused or Eurocentric. So a tiny bit about us, and then our methodology, which we've exported, a focus on the brilliant support given by the European Commission over a decade now, where it's now spread across the world, some of the lessons that we've picked up, and finally a few words about the future. This is what gets us out of bed in the morning. I'm sure you've seen this slide a lot this past few days, but maybe not this. On the 15th of May, we've exceeded 415 parts per million on CO2 for the first time in human history. So why am I talking about climate change mitigation? Because resource efficiency has the best potential to address climate change. And this is true of many economies, not just the UK. So resource efficiency, climate change, you can't divorce them. They're absolutely connected together. So, what do? You may have heard of the NIST programme that we started off back in 2002, I think it was. So we took that programme, we tested it in the UK and wanted to see if it worked in other economies. We found it did, so we took the methodology across the world. We're finding more and more strategic applications for industrial symbiosis now, in planning, in post-disaster, post-conflict areas, so lots of different applications for it. We underpin all this with data, which is why I enjoyed the scale of presentation so much. Data is so key in advancing this topic. So we have a software package called Synergy. We have a not-for-profit for most of our work in Africa. We work with governments. We were proud to host the G7 back in 2015 on this topic. We do a bit of original research, Horizon 2020 mainly, and we do a little bit of thought leadership on the topic. So, 15 years ago, you'll find a few dots on the world map. Our friends from Kallenborg, friends from Netherlands, a little bit of byproduct synergy in North America, the top-down model from Korea. But in just 15 years, that's just where we've been. So, sorry about my carbon footprint, but that's just where we've been, and of course there are other companies working in this area. So across six continents, and particularly in more recent years, Africa is becoming a little bit of a hotbed in this area. Our methodology, conceptually, very simple. It's hard work, but what isn't hard work, but the concept is very simple. We build a network, we make that network work, we identify the opportunities through opportunity mapping, we have that database support to help advance that, but we use facilitators. I don't think our technology ICT at the moment can replace facilitators. You need that human element to engage with companies and move forward. And finally, of course, we measure the impact, which is, of course, is vital. If you get it right, you get some remarkable outputs. This happens to be England over an 8-year period, and you can see you can have your economic, social and environmental outputs at the same time. And again, going back to the scale of presentation, it's that systemic approach which is key. So at the same time as reducing carbon 42 million tonnes, we can create 10,000 jobs and save industries over 1.2 billion euros. So you can have it all. I mentioned the software, and what excites me at the moment, I'm not a software geek by the way, I can't even operate my own system, but what we have here is something which isn't advanced because it's using artificial intelligence. So it's not a passive system, it's got a recommender in there, and it's now got direct company access, and it uses big data. So you can pre-populate the system, again, to help identify synergies. So that's a quick advert for Synergy 4.0. The UK has been pretty pathetic in the last 4 or 5 years in this area, I have to say, but we've woken up at last, and we've got 3 initiatives at the moment, which I think are reasonably exciting. Smart waste tracking. Now, this was designed to fight waste crime, but we've persuaded the government now to use that data to help identify industrial symbiosis opportunities. And if you think of the power of knowing all the waste, where it's going, its proper codification, quantities, timing, everything, what we can do with that data in a positive way rather than just using it for waste crime. 3 government departments have come together to trying to put together a national materials database, I think principally for the reason of resource security, material scarcity. And our research community have just approved, I think, a £5 million programme to set up a manufacturing research network. Now, that network, we're not letting the academics run away and do it themselves because that would be a disaster. So what we do have, we have industry partners and government partners in that, so we can help direct the researchers to meet business need rather than them go away and just invent things on their own. So a very integrated, if you like, public-private partnership there. And I think they've put £5 million behind that. And we're one of the industry partners behind it. Back to Europe as a whole now, the Commission have been, again, brilliant in supporting this type of activity over 10 years now. It started off just as a best practice example in the Waste Framework Directive back in 2009. But if you look at this slide, you can see how it's infiltrated industry, entrepreneurship, energy, circular economy, what else we got now, resource efficiency, entrepreneurship. So it's permeated quite a lot through the Commission. And finally, in 2018, it actually got into law by amendments to the Waste Framework Directive, prioritising replicable practices of industrial symbiosis. So it's now actually mandated for member states to promote this type of activity. DG Grow commissioned a report back in 2018 that was led by TNO and Technopolis. We had a small contribution to make, but it actually started putting some numbers in this area. So the estimate was across the EU member states, there's a potential of 73 billion cost savings alone per year. So it's a huge number, huge number. They recommend facilitated, publicly supported models because it does address market failures. There's no real commercial models out there at the moment of this type that are working very effectively. And of course, a supportive policy environment is quite important. In the tender that our colleague from the Commission mentioned about setting up a network across Europe, they made some observations in the call for tender. One is that they expect it to grow quite quickly. We need more industrial symbiosis solutions. There are a lack of common standards. And to address that common standard issue, we got a good start. We've now got a pre-standard on industrial symbiosis. It was a consensus building process with academics, politicians, practitioners, businesses, and it took about 10 months to develop in this consensus building process. And we had the good fortune to chair that, but it was launched by Janusz Potocznik in Brussels back in February 2018 and published in December. So I would recommend you getting hold of that document. If you go to SEN website, you can get it for free. Skills agenda. Oh my goodness. Skills agenda. The Commission have recognised that deficit, and they've just launched a €4 million programme for vocational industrial symbiosis training, which I think is quite important. Okay, let's do the world tour now very, very quickly. Cairo, 10 months ago. So same type of activity, same workshop. You see it right around the world. Cairo, this is our friends in Canada, and they've just had their funding renewed yesterday, I believe. Again, all got good impacts, all verified. So it's happening in North America. This is the most recent project in Israel, in North Israel, all SMEs, but already after 3 months they're getting synergies, and the Ministry of Industry there is delighted. I don't read Hebrew, but apparently it says they're trying to make lots and lots of savings through this approach. And that again is a typical output report, which we get all around the world. Lots of companies, good engagement, high opportunity value, good customer satisfaction in terms of the companies. Our friends in South Africa, Western Cape. Now here, it's funded by the city, so the city supports it rather than direct from the government. And again, they've had very good success, and I think they picked up on an award at the Circulars last year. I have to mention Invest Northern Ireland. It's a regional development agency, the only one we've got left in the UK as it happens, but they've supported this now for 13 years, 13 years of continued investment, and that's what you need. And they're just about to sign a contract there for another 4 years, so that will be a 17-year programme. They've recognised that there's no diminishing returns in this area and it needs sustained support. So hats off to Invest Northern Ireland. And again, excellent results in an economy which is dominated by SMEs. In Turkey, I've just finished some work over there, and it's their Ministry of Industry again that are driving this. They've got a national roadmap now, and part of that is that, again, they've had excellent results on the ground. Most of this comes from a small area called Eskişehir in Turkey, and it's a European Commission project, Sharebox, but you can see that particularly on the economic indicators, it's far exceeded the expectations. Okay, success factors very quickly. Full-time practitioners I would recommend. The engagement model, all sizes, all sectors, very holistic. Not only dealing with materials, but water, energy, capacity, logistics, you name it. Data, key, and sustained investment. Those are my top 5, if you like, success factors. And the biggest market failure for me is that time poverty of SMEs. They really do not have time to do this type of material without assistance. That's why public sector needs to get engaged and help them. They just do not have the time. I think we're having a session this afternoon in the workshop about barriers, so I won't crack on about this one now. But looking to the future, the reactive demand-led model, like the NIST model, there's still enormous opportunity out there, absolutely enormous. It's just hard to quantify, but we tried in that report, the 73 billion euros. Enormous opportunity. On the proactive or the planning model, these applications keep on coming out the woodwork, so much more to do in that area as well. But both of the above are now making use of artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, so we're taking advantage of the new technologies. It's becoming increasingly explicit now in policy. If you look at the European Commission, Israel, Turkey, it's at national level in policy. And sustainability, why do we crack on that these programs have to be self-sustaining? If they deliver economic benefit, social benefit, environmental benefit, and they give the government a big tax return, well, why not leave it alone? It's madness to say that they have to be self-sufficient, and the reason they can't be is precisely because of those market failures that we've talked about. So, we choose what's sustainable, and so don't mend what isn't broken. And thank you very much for listening, and I'm sorry I had to rush through rather quickly.